Welcome back to another Roblox Studio tutorial. In today's video, we're going to take a look at part velocity, and we're going to see how we can use that to move different objects. So right here, you can see that I'm moving my character around in a square, and then we're also going to create this cool little cannon over here. So whenever I click this button here, it's going to release a ball, and then shoot it. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive in and see how we can do this in Roblox Studio. Okay, so part velocity is a property of a part. So if we insert a part into the game and look at the properties section, then there'll be a section called velocity down here. And there's two different ways that we can use this velocity. So if you watched any of my first-person shooter tutorials, then we use the velocity to move the bullets. But if you anchor that part and adjust the velocity, then the part itself is not going to move, but anything on the surface of the part will. So let's go and take a look at a quick example. So I'm just going to stretch this out like I did for the other ones. Okay, and I'm going to make sure the part is anchored so it doesn't move. And then I'm going to head down to the velocity section. And we can see that there's three different numbers, and these stand for the X, Y, and Z components. So you can change the velocity in any direction that you want to. So if I want it to move left to right here, then the part that I would change would be the X part. And the way I know that, if you look up at the cube here, you can see in the background here that there's an X going left to right. So that's how I know that I need to change the X part of the velocity. And the part that you'll still need to test is whether you need negative or positive velocity. Let's go and start though with positive velocity, and let's choose a value of 50. Okay, so let's go and try this out and see what happens. Okay, I can see that this part is not moving, but when I step on this part here, my character moves, and it looks like 50 for the velocity is making it go to the right. If I want it to go to the left, then I would just make it negative 50. So back here for the velocity section, we'll change it from 50 to negative 50. Okay, and now if I step on this part, I move to the left. And I think it's probably pretty obvious, but if you increase this value, you're going to go faster. So let's try something crazy like maybe 500. Okay, and now if I step on this part here, it shoots me off much faster. You can also change the direction, so if you don't want it to go left to right, but you'd rather go forward and backwards, you can do that. So if we take a look at our cube here, it looks like going forward and backwards goes along the Z line. So what I'm going to do is stretch this out a little bit. And then for the velocity part, instead of changing the X part, we'll change the Z part. Alright, so let's go ahead and try it out. So now if I come here on the side, instead of going left to right, it's going to go forward and backwards. Okay, so I think that covers the basics of the part velocity and how we can move things on the surface of a part. I will warn you guys though, if you move this part here in any direction, it's going to clear out the velocity. So if you're testing this out and you notice that it's not working, just double check to make sure you didn't move it and that it didn't clear out the velocity. Okay, so now that we have the basics down, let's go and take a look at our cannon. Okay, so as far as the construction goes, I have two side walls, which are the pink ones here. And then on each end of the cannon, I have a wedge part. So there's a wedge part here, and then also one over here. And then there's also a flat part in the center section. Right here is a part that I called gate, and if you want to follow along, that's important that you rename it because we're going to be using it in the script. And then I have a ball here that I made halfway transparent. If you want to, you can make it fully transparent, but the reason we're doing this is because whenever we click the button, we're going to create a new ball, and it's just easier to have a ball already there so we can take the position of it. So just as a quick recap, we have two sidewalls. So they serve no purpose besides just keeping the ball inside the track. We have two wedge parts, and then a center part. We have this part right here, which we called gate, and then we have a ball here that we called respawn, and that part right there is what we're using to respawn the ball. Okay, so as far as applying velocity to these parts go, for the center track right here, for the velocity section, I set that equal to negative 2000 for the Z part. But if you have this facing a different direction, it might be the X part that you need to change. And then for this wedge part here, I have that set at negative 500. And like I mentioned before, this will change if you're facing this cannon in a different direction. So it may just require some experimentation, but it's likely either going to be the X part or the Z part, and then you'll just have to figure out whether it's going to be positive or negative. Okay, so moving on to our little button stand here, the only important part is that you have some part, and you rename it to button. And then inside of that part, you want to make sure you have a click detector and that's where the script is going to go as well. Okay, so inside the script, we're going to start with a variable for the button. So we'll say local button, and this is going to be equal to script.parent. And then we're going to make a variable for the click detector. So we'll say local click, and this is going to be equal to button.click detector. We're going to make a variable for our gate part. So we'll say local gate, and that's going to be equal to game.workspace.gate. And finally, we're going to make a variable for the respawn ball, which is this one right here. To do that, we'll just say local respawn, and that'll be equal to game.workspace.respawn. After that, we're going to be making a function that'll run whenever a button gets clicked on. So we'll say local function. The name of this function can be shoot_ball. The first thing we're going to do is make the button turn red whenever we click on it. So we'll say button.brickcolor, and that's going to be equal to brickcolor.new. Inside of the parentheses, we're going to put really red. After that, we're going to create a new ball. So we'll say local ball, and this is going to be equal to instance.new. Inside of the parentheses, we're going to be creating a ball. After that, we're going to say ball.shape, and this is going to be equal to enum.partType. So here it should be part and not ball, so we're going to be creating a part first, and then we'll change the shape of it. Okay, so like I was saying down here, it's going to be enum.partType, and then here is where we're going to set it equal to a ball. Next, we're going to define the size of it, so we'll say ball.size, and this is going to be equal to vector3.new. A good size for my track is 1.5, 1.5, and 1.5. Depending on how big or how small you make your track, you may have to adjust these numbers. The next thing we're going to do is set a color for it. So we'll say ball.brickcolor. It's going to be equal to brickcolor.new. And I'm going to choose black. After that, I'm going to set the position of the ball. So I'll say ball.position. And this is going to be equal to the same position as our respawn ball. So I'm going to say respawn.position. So that's the nice thing about having that ball there. We can just take the position of it. And finally, for this ball, we're just going to set the parent property. So we'll say ball.parent is equal to game.workspace. Okay, so now we have our ball. So the next thing we want to do is lower the gate. So we're going to say gate.transparency. And this is going to be equal to 1. And then we'll say gate.canCollide. And this will be equal to false. We're going to wait for 3 seconds, so that'll be like our cooldown time. And then we're going to reset the gate. So we'll say gate.transparency. It's going to be equal to 0. And then gate.canCollide. And this is going to be equal to false. And finally, we want to run this whenever the button gets clicked on. So we'll say click.mouseClick. And then we're going to say :connect. And then inside the parentheses, we'll put shoot_ball. All right, so let's go and test things out and make sure it's working. Okay, so I'll go over to my button here and we'll check it out. Okay, so I'll click on it. There's our ball, and it shoots off. Once it turns green again, then I can do another one. And it looks like it's not turning green, so I probably forgot to add that line in. So here on the script, after the 3 seconds, we want to change the color back to green. So we'll say button.brickcolor is going to be equal to brickcolor.new. And then we're going to change it back to lime green. All right, so let's go and retest. Okay, so that one shot off. And then after 3 seconds, it goes back to green. And I can shoot another one. Alright, so I don't know how useful this would be in a game, but I just thought it was fun to make, and that's why I did it. And before we end with this video, I'm just going to go over a few final things with the cannon. Okay, and I think I forgot to mention before, but just like our other parts, you want to make sure that everything is anchored. For the flat part inside of it, I changed a few more properties. So down here for the custom properties section, I clicked the check mark. And then for the friction part, I changed it to 2. These are all different numbers that you can play around with and see what happens. I found though for the friction part that 2 worked the best. And I also did the same thing for this one here. So under the custom properties, I changed friction to 2. So for this ball here, the properties that I have set for that, for the transparency is equal to 0.5. I also have this part anchored, and then I have can collide turned off. You might have some issues if this is facing a different direction. So if it's not working the way you expect it to, then try swapping it from the Z position to the X position, and then try it again. If you're having any other issues, let me know in the comments, and I'll try to help the best I can. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next one.